happens when Violent J locks himself inside the Funhouse studio and screams and rants about nothing for 3 verses? You're about to find out. It's just this way at the Dim Carnival.
Welcome back to the Dim Carnival, everybody. I'm Bill.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Ryan.
And this week we're very quiet and low-key because we're recording early in the morning, relatively, for us. Not early at all. And we're talking about Forgotten Freshness Volume 3. We're talking about some more tracks off of that. But before we jump into that, guys, I want to cover a couple things real quick. So we're packing up a lot of stuff here at my place, and I finally found all of the physical copies of my ICP CDs.
Whoa, awesome.
Yeah. They don't have the jewel cases, but they do have the liner notes and the discs. And so I was not able to verify whether there is a spell under the tray of the Dark Lotus album. But I did want to talk about the Dark Lotus liner notes real quick because so we all know that cool metallic cover. But what I forgot was the liner notes aren't really liner notes. So it's a fold out, and it's a 5-panel fold out of pyramids, just a big panoramic picture of pyramids. And then on the other side, on the reverse side of that, is a big, it's all in gold foil. It's hieroglyphic. The hieroglyphics are really cool. I'll see if I can get you a picture of that, Ryan, so you can get it to Instagram. But I did want to take a moment to talk about the liner notes for Bizarre and Bizarre, the booklets. So I don't have the jewel cases, but I don't think there was a lot in the jewel cases. But these liner notes, I forgot how rad these liner notes are.
Right.
Because the liner notes are like it's like a pretty big booklet for both of them. And like, so the question marks one, Bizarre, it has the inside cover and the back inside cover of the booklet have 18 like cool like different pictures of ICP inside there, like all from around this era of juggalos and ICP and stuff. And these feature the photo shoot of some of my favorite ICP paint where Shaggy has like 2 negative space lines going across his face, and Jay has an X going across his face where there's and those are really cool. And then there's games inside this one. So Bizarre Bizarre has the liner notes. It says all the music on this entire album was written by Mikey Clark, the Don Dada himself. All the music on this masterpiece is mixed by Mikey Clark and Insane Clown Posse. Picture this: the 3 of them, silent, wearing headphones, turning knobs, flicking switches, and scratching their heads and scrotums. They look like 3 scientists on the brink of something that is going to change the world forever. all the flavor on this record was produced by Mikey Clark and his Insane Clown Posse together, like 3 balls swinging freely in a Great Dane's nutbag. Everything on this joint was recorded at the Funhouse studio in Detroit, Michigan. However, the album's intro and the skits were recorded in Denver, Colorado at Millennium Studios and Rocky Mountain Recorders. So the skits, so they were in the studio doing like the right here banging on a bongo drum just for the skits.
That's all they were in there for. Oh my God. Wow.
So I'll try and more quickly go through the second Bizarre album liner notes, which has the eyeballs, and it came with the 3D glasses. So it has the same 3x3 grids of pictures, but in the background, the Bizarre spiral is in 3D. And then it has the liner notes again. All music. This is interesting. All music on this album was written by Mikey Clark, except for intro, which contains a sample of Urban Legend from the feature film Urban Legend, which is really weird. That is also a sample, and it is on Spotify. Whereas they couldn't clear the John Carpenter one.
Huh.
I guess the people who wrote the music to Urban Legend really needed the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's a bizarre word search, which is also in 3D. The next page is the double page thing, which is actually the only activity that I filled out in either of these books because it was a connect the dots. And two things. One, I fucking love connect the dots. When I was a kid, that was like my favorite shit. Like anytime I would see a connect the dots book, I like had to have it. I love connect the dots so much. But also, like, I could not figure out what the fuck this connect the dots was. So I did it, and it goes across both pages. And it's a connect the dots of, on the left, it ends up being a man who's, like, lunging and swinging a big axe, and the head is just a dotted line with a blank space inside that says, paste your picture here. And then the other page is a body that's, like, being hit by the axe. And it's like, ugh! And then it has another dotted line with an oval, like, below the axe, like, near the guy's foot. And it says, paste your enemy's picture here. So it's a connect the dots of you cutting off your enemy's head, which is fun. And then the next page, the centerfold, is the Bizarre Maze, which is in 3D. You have to try and help guide ICP from the crashed tour bus through the 3D maze to the Dark Carnival, along the way avoiding the marauding rednecks, the Bible-thumping preacher, small-town cops, and try to keep Jay out of the nut house. And the depiction of the Dark Carnival is just a tent with a sign on top that says Dark Carnival with a skull on it, and it's dripping blood down. And then there's like a leg inside the Dark Carnival.
All right.
Trump. There's a 2-page ad for Insane Clown Posse merchandise, which includes ISCP comics, new action figures in stores Christmas 2000, old action figures still available in limited quantity, labeled the original bean-filled snuggable thugs, the Beanie Boys.
Hell yeah! Oh, man, should have kept those.
And the last 2-page photo spread. So I'm glad that we got to do that. I hope that wasn't too irritating for our listeners. But fun and interesting, and I had forgotten how much fresh flavor was packed into these booklets. So it was good to find that, and glad I got to relate that to you guys. But the other thing I wanted to that I remembered, I had been intending to tell you guys a story, like when we started. Like I was like, oh, I can't wait to get to Jekyll Brothers to tell you guys this story, and I think I forgot to tell you guys this story. But if I did, just let me know right off the bat. So when I got Jekyll Brothers, I was like super stoked about it. Bought it at Target, and then I brought it home, and I was like listening to it. I was loving it. And then like a guy came over who was a friend at the time, who was like he was big into the church. He was a Christian guy, and I was like, oh yeah, I've been listening to this. And like I showed him the Jekyll Brothers, and he like looked at it. He just looked at the cover, like the slipcase cover that had whichever Jekyll Brother on it. He just looked at it, and he was like, "This is some really evil stuff, man." And I just like I remember that so vividly about like just a guy looking at Jekyll, Jake Jekyll or Jack Jekyll, like, and like to me when I look at it today, even when I looked at it at the time, I was like, oh, that's, cool. It's a fun little clown. It's got fire. But like, that's just like the tip of the iceberg about like why a lot of people hate this band so much. 'Cause like, if you're super into like Jesus and like trying to live a good life, like you look at something like that drawing, like that silly little Shaggy Two Dope drawing that is so rudimentary and dumb and silly and over the top. And you're like, oh man, this is an evil presence in my house. If I have this in my house, the devil's going to start talking to me. And then who knows what I'm liable to do.
Okay, so I want to talk about...
masturbating.
Okay, so here's the thing, and I want to go into this as delicately as possible because I'm not a religious person, but I think that this is really funny, and that's potentially really fucked up of me, but whatever, I'm going to say it anyways. There's like a Vine or whatever, one of these things I saw on the internet, a clip of, I think, a woman, I'm assuming a woman, recording her mother, and she's like having an argument with her mom, and she says, "What the hell?" And it was just her saying hell in her house was like making her mom have this really emotional reaction, as though it's like she's bringing evil into the house and putting evil on her, just by saying that word in front of her.
So Steve, I'm sure you can relate to this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many times that I got caught when I was in high school having a suicidal tendency tape or I don't know, Metallica stuff, and my mom specifically, like saying that very thing that Ryan was talking about, that Vine had, where just like, you're literally bringing demons into our house. And I'd be like, but I have comic books like Ghost Rider, and that guy is a demon, and there are no demons in our house. Like, or I've had this tape for like a year, and there's no,
Your dad collected all those Ghost Rider comics.
Yeah.
Which is about a guy who dies and goes to hell.
Yeah.
And then he's the hero.
Yeah, and he's the hero because he gets a demon of vengeance. It's awesome.
Although Jesus does guest star in one of those original.
He sure does, and I have that issue.
I know, it's a good issue.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of dark, let's talk about good schools and the learning process. Let's talk about the song "It" off of Forgotten Freshness Volume 3. If you haven't taken a listen to that, go ahead and take a listen right now. I've heard this song a bunch of times, and I absolutely 100% never realized he was saying "good schools" at the beginning of this song, which is amazing. So the formatting of these lyrics on Genius is all sorts of fucked up, and I proposed, like, I went through the whole song on Genius and like proposed a big edit to it. So hopefully that gets approved and people will actually be able to read these lyrics at some point. But this is a complete redo of the song "Something," aka "Cripple and Rape Me," off of Dark Lotus Tales from the Lotus Pod, and on Hatchet History, provided by Jiggles, which is always very helpful. He transcribes the little story of this song from the lyric booklet of Forgotten Freshness 3, which is also extremely helpful. And it's basically there was a Saturday night and Jay was in town alone and he didn't want to go out and party or do anything, but he just really wanted to be in the studio. So he called Mike Clark, who happened to be home as well, and Mike was willing to meet him in the studio. They didn't have an idea. They didn't have anything going on, but they decided to just like take this Dark Lotus song and mute everything on it. And then Jay spent 10 minutes writing lyrics, and then they wrote it. And I liked this summation of the song. The song ain't about anything special. It's just Jay screaming and ranting off insane thoughts over the 3 verses. But the bottom line is the bottom line, and that is that it's dope. Once Jay and Mike finished that night, they had no idea if anything would ever become of the song, but they both felt better having made something fresh that stale last night. Well, they finally found out where the song they simply titled "It" would end up, right here on FF3. Good spot, I might add.
Nice.
Hey, there we go.
I also like that Jay clearly wrote these liner notes because he's talking about, as the hours slipped later and later into the night, Jay started to go insane with boredom. He knew what he needed. He wanted a dose of. He needed a fix of his favorite. He needed a shot of studio.
I think that
Sleepy Town. Go ahead.
I think that I like this version better.
Oh yeah, no, I like this version way better.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting that it doesn't. It's just it's basically like stream of consciousness or whatever. Like there isn't any story behind it. I actually kind of like that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this song. It's up there in my pantheon of favorite ICP songs, and partly why it is I found that, like, if you really look at some of my favorite songs, like Jacob's Word and stuff like that, they're really almost like non sequitur to the story, and it's just so out there and bizarre that I find that that's some of my favorite stuff that they do.
Sure.
And usually it's just when that happens. And I don't know why this type of stuff speaks to me. I mean, Bill, you would only understand this because you're around to see me do this, but it reminds me of back in the late 90s, early 2000s Mad Magazine with their stupid, photoshopped pictures.
Oh, yeah.
That used to make me laugh so hard. And
nothing makes Steve laugh harder than a photoshopped picture.
Yeah.
When we watch SNL Weekend Update, anytime they put up a Photoshop in the corner, when Norma was talking or whatever, they wouldn't even say anything. They just put the picture up, and Steve would just laugh for like 5 minutes.
God, yeah.
He wasn't laughing at the joke ever. It was just the picture.
I'm a simple man.
No. Another thing I love is I put a sock on my penis and I went to the jewelry store. Stick 'em up. The little stick 'em up. Imagine is his penis talking. Because his penis won't get hard. And by the time it does, he ain't horny no more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote the same note. It reminded me of Jacob's word of this, him just, being driven by something that is out of his control or something that's controlling him. And I know you're a big fan of that song, so.
Yeah.
Oh, we all are, my man.
Well, yeah, of course we all are.
I love the line, "My brain has a brain of its own. My body ain't got nothing to do with it, so leave me alone." Yeah, it's just, he's really good at this stream of consciousness type stuff. And he's like, when he's like, "Oh, I'll try heroin," and then he's like, and then immediately says, "I don't care about my face anymore. I talk and eat with my feet and drag my face on the floor." What does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, and
it's a great visual.
Yeah, I talk and eat with my feet.
He mentions the crows, so the crows come back,
Mhm.
and the crows watching. So that's always been a visual that has kept in my mind since
Yeah.
I read. Was it not Graveyard Shift? One of those. Fuck, man, I can't remember. Skeleton Key. I think it was Skeleton Key. In 7th grade, I bought that book, and there's this poem. I don't know what else to call it. That Stephen King wrote. That's all about paranoia and being trapped in his house and people watching him and surveilling him. And he's just super paranoid. And one of those things is, I think it's crow men across the street and they have coins for eyes. And that image was always just one that has stuck with me and is one of the reasons I think why was an impression that helped me to really think crows were awesome or something or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate that appearance or whatever. Every time they talk about crows, it always makes me think of that.
I also like that he says that a praying mantis's brain is bright.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I don't know what he's trying to say there. Its head is so small. How could it be? Its tiny brain would be so bright.
It's kind of interesting that praying mantises are viewed as intelligent.
Yeah, I don't know that for a fact.
Well, in Bug's Life. Praying mantis is this con artist, but I don't know. But I feel like they've always been associated with intelligence, like monks and stuff, praying mantis.
Reverence or
I guess.
Yeah.
You got to be smart to believe in God.
Yeah,
to pray.
I was thinking they're associated with piety.
Right, piety's a better word.
Look, guys, it ain't my fault if my butt's exposed.
Okay, so he says, "It ain't my fault if my butt's exposed. Keep my eyes closed. Something takes over." So he's got his butt out and his eyes closed. And
yeah.
I don't know exactly what's happening. There's a praying mantis in the same verse.
Look, man, calm down. My butt's out. I'm not looking at it. But Steve, is this the dog's interlude? Is that the exact same as it is on the Lotus track? It's different, right?
It's in the reverse order.
Hmm.
Instead of that dog is talking to me, it's that dog. It's on Dark Lotus.
And doesn't it say murder on Dark Lotus, and on this one it says I'm sexy?
Yeah,
it does both. It's both.
Does both. Oh.
Yeah.
It's both on Dark Lotus. Yeah.
Murder, I'm sexy, right?
Yeah, two different people.
Yeah.
I think it's actually better in this order.
Yes. Except that dog is scaring me, and then followed by their dogs. They don't do that. They scare people. I think it makes more sense to say that dog is talking to me. Dude, their dogs. They don't do that, do they?
Yeah, I wish that dude, their dogs. They don't do that. I wish that wasn't in there.
Take
that part out.
I like that. I always thought he was saying them, their dogs, not dude, their dogs.
Me too.
I've always thought it was them, their dogs.
I was saying dude.
Yeah,
I really, really like the I'm sexy. Yeah.
There's
I
some
just think the
violence.
song
He
is
pulls the
better.
legs off a dog in this song, which I actually don't mind. I think it's like
Because the phrasing, I pull the legs off a dog, doesn't connote like violence, really.
well, so this is one of those things that I feel like I'm able to do that maybe some people have a more difficult time with, and that's and we've talked about it on multiple episodes of the cartoon violence versus the like real suggested violence.
Right.
That there's two different things, and
Because
the
he's saying it just as a concept, really.
yeah, the cartoon. Well, he's also talking about eating shit in a hot dog bun. Like
Yes.
it's so it's like slapstick. The Marvel character or whatever. It's like it just doesn't fit in with the rest of the stuff. You're not going to take it seriously.
And he did it just to roll
just
it
the
down
first,
the hill.
first time I ever heard, like, right. The first time I ever heard, like, I pull the legs off a dog, like, I envisioned like a slinky dog or like a play school dog, just like a plastic
Like
dog,
or like a plush dog even.
yeah, or just a, like, well, in my mind it was always plastic of some sort, but like a Mr. Potato Head dog or whatever. Just like that's the immediate image that I conjured up, and I think it's just his delivery and the word pulled. And if he had just said like I tear or like I chop or whatever, like it's deliberate. It's not like you said, it's cartoony, and it's not like supposed to be like a gross thing that he's doing. It's just supposed to be dumb.
Yeah. And then he's trying to impress that girl, and he bashes his homie's face in with a rock.
I mean, I'm sure some people would be impressed by that. And also, like, I also like the bash my homie's face in with a rock, and then he goes,
He makes a lot of great noises in this. Yeah. He does like some of the things I love, where making the you know,
yeah, that's right after the Fragmented stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So we're agreed we like this song better than the other one, but we wish that the hook was a little different. All right. So let's talk about the next track. It is called "Run." If you haven't listened to it, go ahead and take a listen right now. Little like fucking Michael Flatley Lord of the Dance shit in here. I really like the music on this track. And maybe that's stupid of me, but I enjoy it.
I wasn't too sure how to feel about it initially. But I think this is one of those songs that the more that I listened to it, the more that I came to appreciate it.
Ryan, Steve, let's hear your thoughts. I hate this.
No, I don't hate it at all. It's not something I would go out of my way to listen to. It's funny because I guess I just always skip this song after I heard the intro when I was first listening to this, because I was like, this is not what I'm looking for in ICP. And then I skip it to the next song, which I used to love and now listen to it and cringe, but we'll get to that. But I knew that's what I was skipping to get to. I think this time through listening to it, I was still kind of like, it's definitely a song, and it kind of reminds me of stuff that will come up like on The Tempest, maybe, or maybe on Violent J's The Shining solo album. And the songs it's reminding me of are much better. So I'm not trying to like make you guys be like, oh crap, about future music. But I think okay. So to me, that's more where this song took me to, is like, oh, this reminds me of things they're going to do like fucking 10 years after this song, or maybe not quite that long. But again, I think it just being like, this is the beginning of a new, different, or a beginning of a different style that they're heading towards and stuff. And,
well, it's interesting that you say that, because the liner notes say that this was made as a test for Mike P. They said that the first week he was hired, Jay and Shaggy wanted to see if they could get along with him, so they just went into the studio to test him out and make a song together. Which is interesting to me that like he was hired and then they were like, well, can we get along with him? Which is interesting. I mean, I guess that's how jobs work, but so the song turned out fine. They all really liked the song, but they also knew that like, this doesn't really fit in with anything. Like, we like the song, but it doesn't like go anywhere. So it didn't show up anywhere until Forgotten Freshness 3. And this also has background and chorus vocals by Sin from Zug Island, because I could not remember last time, but Zug Island is very much a Mike P thing. And I think we got an email about it. Ryan, should we just dive into that now, or?
Yeah, no, that's a great time.
Cool. So the homie Rob sent a lot of information about Zug Island, and he said, "It's so fun hearing you guys get excited about Zug Island. I love that you guys aren't familiar with most of their stuff / history. Cracked Tiles is so good. He loves that we don't know about."
Okay,
Yeah.
so Rob emails us, occasionally, and he's mentioned that multiple times, and I think that's one of the things that he's enjoying most about listening is us coming across something that he really likes and us expressing that we like it as well.
Sure.
So yeah, he actually makes a recommendation that we should cover this album.
Okay.
And I'm up for checking it out. Maybe if that's something you guys
we can
want
do a one episoder on it.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or maybe that'll be our first Patreon bonus. I'm just kidding. We don't have the juice yet to start offering bonuses. But yeah, so he says Jay didn't do a whole album about it because I thought that he had recorded. I thought he said on his book that he recorded a whole album and then they hired someone to come in and do the vocals over it. He did one song. And there's actually that song that he did is on YouTube. It's a Pearl Jam cover. He did a Pearl Jam cover of Not For You. He did one song. And they put it on the hotline. And they asked Juggalos if they loved it, hated it, or really hated it. And they decided that most of the comments were like, it's cool, but Jay can't fucking sing. So they hired a singer. And the band was already formed, and Jay was writing the lyrics, but there's no recordings that have Jay singing the Zug stuff, which is a bummer, because I would have liked to hear that version of the album. So while they were looking for a singer, Jay and Mike P created scratch discs for Jay to write to, but to further develop the songs. So basically they put the band made all the music, and Jay then wrote the lyrics based on that music. Jay, Mike P, and Sin took the scratch discs and thought out more lyrics and wrote melodies and singing parts together. It's commonly believed that Sin came in and just better sang the Jay stuff, but it's more nuanced than that. So yeah, he goes into a lot more information about it. We'll talk about more of what Rob had to say when we talk about Zug Island's Cracked Tiles, I guess.
Nice.
So cool. Thanks for sending that in, Rob. We always like to hear more information from our listeners, so anytime you guys want to chime in, go ahead and feel free. dimcarnival@gmail.com. So yeah, there's a lot of bagpipes on this song, talking about running.
So the music is kind of interesting to me. So yeah, there's that really kind of jarring bagpipe sample that comes right out of the gate to start the track. And to me, I think I had a similar reaction to Steve. It just sounded like this is not ICP, like, or whatever traditional sound. And so I'm inclined to skip past it when I hear it as well. But there is some pretty cool guitars. It's mostly like a muted electric guitar, and some of that scratching. To me, it really sounded like the same era of like Korn. Or like a ripoff or very like derivative of that kind of sound that was really prevalent at this time. And so while it's good, it doesn't sound very different or interesting. Like it's different than what ICP normally do, but it's not like unique or whatever within the soundscape of this type of music. I don't know if you guys felt differently about it.
Well, my favorite part of the track is the bagpipe stuff. Like I think it's really cool. I think it sounds cool. Like it's not what you're used to or expecting to hear from an ICP track, and that is what hooks me every time this track comes on. I'm like, oh yeah, this song, and then I end up listening to it because I love I really like bagpipes. I'm huge into like Scottish folk music and stuff, so I just like hearing it, and it's just like it's such a unique song in ICP's catalog that to me is like what. But I totally agree with everything that you're saying. Like the rock parts of it totally sound just like derivative early 2000s rock. So it's a weird song, but the bagpipes to me are what makes the song.
So and I'm inclined to agree with you once the full mix of the song comes in and the bagpipes are part of the song. But when it initially starts, to me it feels very jarring, and I'm always like, wow, like. It's like it's a cover or something, is what it feels like at first. But once the music comes together and the beat with that, it feels fine to me. And I like it on from that point on. But I think this is an interesting concept. So this is, they have a lot of songs about like being down, like, well, down with the clown or whatever. And so this is a song about when I heard Run, because we actually just last week you were telling about how this is the era where Jay started running, and that became a really significant thing for him. And I think when I was listening to his audiobook, it was that era helped to inspire him to write Growing Again.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing that I thought of, and I can't wait till we get to that song and talk about it. I remember when you showed,
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of earlier when I was saying this kind of starts reminding me of stuff in the future that will come.
Yeah, good call.
And that was exactly the song.
That was like the one song off of The Tempest, because Ryan had totally stopped listening at that point. And I was like, Ryan, check this song out.
That song's amazing. I love that song. And
such a great song.
Yeah, and that song's super positive. And so I saw this song was called Run, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be about running. It's gonna be something positive, and it's not at all. Yeah. But I mean, I guess it is kind of a positive thing. It's about like sticking with your homies, but it's really like shaming people that they think are weak, right? That aren't people who don't stick with their friends, people that kind of peace out. And so that made me once I went through, I was like, oh, it's not like a positive running thing. It's more of like maybe like a slight dig at like a greasy kind of situation that really happened to Jay. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I thought it was going to be more of like a positive thing going in.
Yeah, I thought that song Growing Again, but I also thought of Watch My Car. I don't know if you're okay.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's on The Tempest as well. I think it is. I could be wrong, but it's about like Shaggy hanging out in front of a liquor store and some rich guy is telling him to watch my car.
That sounds awesome.
It's a great song.
Well, something we need to go for is, unfortunately, we have to talk about the next song, which is the infamous none other than Nothing But a Bitch Thing. So if you want to listen, go ahead and take a listen right now. So here's the bummer about this song. If you lop off the intro, it's not so... Well, it's pretty bad. But here's the bummer. The music is incredible. The music is absolutely incredible. It is, strangely, not strangely at all, the track has a sample, which is the original is the same song that was sampled on No Vaseline, which is probably the most famous diss track of all time. But yeah, I love the music. Love the music. There's a lot of funny lines in here, but mostly it's just a bummer and like problematic and
what's interesting. So
just the worst thing.
Okay, so the sample that's used is a song called Daz by a band called Brick, which I don't know, whatever. I saw that and I was like, I don't fucking know what this is. And then I started the song and I was like, oh, it's this song. Right. And I recognize the song Daz immediately as soon as it starts playing, but I have listened to this song dozens of times and it's never occurred to me that that's the song that's being sampled.
Yes.
That was super weird to me. And I've always known about the song, the track No Vaseline, just because of its its place in the annals of history of hip hop. But I don't know that I've ever heard it before. I might have heard it once a long time ago. But I just was never into that, I don't know, that rivalry or whatever. Like I just never listened to it.
I never even heard of that.
Yeah. So it was cool for me to learn that. I just learned that, within the last week or whatever, looking all this stuff up.
Yeah, No Vaseline is the song that Cube put out when he left NWA.
Right.
Talking about NWA. Yeah. And there's actually a scene in the very, very, very good movie Straight Outta Compton where Eazy-E and the rest of NWA are sitting around listening to No Vaseline and just like being really bummed out that they got just ruined by this song. Anyway,
the notes at Genius are actually really good, because it does mention the samples. It mentions No Vaseline. It also mentions that this song was because there was a back and forth, right? They did, Eminem first did, or sorry, what was the first track that ICP did? The first diss track. I can't remember the name of that one. Slim Anus.
Slim Anus, yeah.
Yeah, so they did Slim Anus, and then on the Marshall Mathers LP on the song Marshall Mathers, he dissed ICP and said how he doesn't need, like, whatever, they wear press-on nails or something.
Yeah.
And so then this was their response to that track.
There are lines that I really like. Like, unfortunately, there is a line in this horrible, atrocious intro that always gets me, which is the "Let me take off my white t-shirt so you can see my bird chest."
When we were listening to Twisted, when I was listening to Twisted for Most Tasteless, my girlfriend walked into the room and she's like, "Is this Eminem?" And it was Jamie Madrox. And I was like, "Well, it's funny that you should mention that because they have multiple songs where he just sounds exactly like Eminem. Like he just does a perfect Eminem impression, and their delivery is actually very similar."
Yeah.
But yeah, man, if you took out all the homophobic stuff, like there's some really funny disses in here, and there's some really like real disses too, man. Like the very first time I heard this, at the very end, the very last line is the one that got me. I was like, "Oh my god, dude!" Where he says, "When I think of your daughter, it makes me sad."
Yeah,
I was like, "Damn, man!" And because that's like their reputation, you know, that child's mother's reputation and father's reputation, you know, are very formative, I imagine, on her. And so whatever. Yeah. That girl's like an adult now, so I'm curious.
And it probably sucked to grow up.
I mean, hopefully she's cool about it now, but like, man, that's just a hard thing to grow up.
Also, the way that the first verse starts is "You ain't never shot at us with no paintballs. Matter of fact, you can come get these paintballs." So good. So there's good stuff in here, which is such a bummer that it's such an atrocious, like, reprehensible song.
Right. Straight out of Warren.
Got everybody hopping out of 35 mile.
I love that. Yeah, when they basically say, like, you know, the little kids, the teeny boppers or whatever, they're buying your records, but the thugs out on our corner, they're not listening to that.
Which is probably pretty accurate.
Probably true.
But like the Straight Outta Warren is very good. So on the liner notes, they have some pretty interesting things to say. The liner notes say, "He started it, so they finished it. Fuck him. Fuck rapping about him anymore too." And then they call him like 4 different names in the chorus of these liner notes. But they call him Emino, and they call him something else too. But then like they say, to answer Eminem's dissing of ICP on his Marshmelon Matthews album, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's
that like they have that little respect for him. But they said, "We hear that when Emino heard the song, he was so upset he slapped himself to sleep." Which is like, ICP is great because they're just such fucking idiots. Like, they're so dumb. And I also really always love the 3 platinum 2 gold, and we still like that. We did it alone without DRE.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're appropriately carrying that, you know, that banner or whatever. Like, that's something that if I were ICP, I would never let anybody forget. Like,
for sure.
We fucking worked for this shit.
So the big bummer of this song is that the music's so good, and also like both of these guys are like on top of their A+ game on this song, which is such a bummer. Like, there's so many songs that aren't like gross where they could have used like this flow, you know. But I also really love Shaggy. Like, his biggest diss is like dissing himself. Like, he's talking about like what a slut Eminem's wife is, and then he's like, "Even I've been fucking her." like that's the biggest insult he can think of. Is like, "Yeah, you know who fucked your wife? Me."
Okay, but honestly, probably my favorite part of the show or of this track is The third verse when he starts, I remember seeing you at St. Andrew's Hall. Yes, come on, come to my show. I just picture like a 7-year-old Eminem with his shaved blonde hair and his giant white T-shirt, and he's like excitedly handing out flyers to everybody, you know, before he's become this bitter, angry, you know, young adult. There's some innocence, and I just really love that image of this kind of crusty ICP walking up to this little kid. You know,
so good. And also like I just sometimes like to think about stuff literally. And as gross and homophobic and bad as it is, I like to think about the literal interpretation of every time I met you, you're sucking dick. Like just run again and again. Like, oh, sorry, I didn't know someone was in here.
Right. Like the way that they're saying what they're saying too, like, is not a great way to say it, but the idea of that is like they're really driving home the point, you know, that like there's something different between their paths. And actually Jay talks about that on his audiobook too, about not really caring anymore. And I think he even says something like, I don't even know why we really thought it was important, or why we were so worked up about it. Because he's like, different people get there different ways. He's like, shit, I wish I had a Dre to get me there. We had to fucking march up the hill, but whatever. We are where we are now, so fuck him. You know, who cares?
Yeah, for sure. I also think the biggest and best diss in the entire song is during the spoken outro when Jay says
last haircut. Yes. Boy band ass 40 Casey Kasem. Oh.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah. Well, again, like you guys, I used to love this song. I used to think it was hilarious. I don't. The only thing I ever really heard from Eminem was whatever Bill had and would show me. So I didn't know too much about his music outside of, like, I knew he was very popular on and stuff like that, and I saw his but I didn't really have a huge vested interest in it. So if it was just funny, I liked it, you know. And I thought, and it was just great for them to rag on him. And but again, like when the song started, I was like just the intro, I was like, oh, this used to make me grossed out just hearing this. And I remember used to think, like, I couldn't even do this joke to somebody, or this diss to somebody, like making the balloon sounds to sound like he's, you know.
Rubbing a balloon is clearly what's happening.
Yeah. And so, but, you know, this song is so well put together, and like you were saying, Bill, it's just got such great music. Like you said too, they're on top of their game. They're rapping so great. I felt like, wow, they really found their passion in something that made them have their A+ game. And it was sad that it was that, and that it was so homophobic. But yeah, I mean, it's something I definitely never listened to again. But it is, for just all intents and purposes, I mean, it is a great song, and for what they wanted to accomplish with it, they certainly did.
One thing that this song definitely accomplished is every time that I hear "Forgot About Dre," I always say, well, I always say, everybody forgot.
Yes, absolutely. What happened? Yeah. All right. So, do we have time to talk about just another crazy click? I think we do.
Yeah.
We definitely do. Because we're moving on, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I will never listen to that song again, ever. So let's listen to just another crazy click, which is 3 6 Mafia featuring Twisted and Insane Clown Posse. If you haven't taken a listen, go ahead and take a listen right now. So just another crazy click, which is spelled CLICK and sometimes misinterpreted by music services as just another crazy chick, perhaps because they're thinking about Gangsta Boo's hook. But interesting thing about this song is 3 6 Mafia called them and asked them if they wanted to guest on a track. And according to the Forgotten Freshness 3 liner notes, this is the first time that has ever happened ever. This is the first time in ICP's long career at that point that they were ever reached out to feature on someone else's track, which is not that weird, but kind of crazy to think about, especially in like the era of like it would be weird today it was weird back then. Today would be unthinkable because like everybody features on everything today. You know, like Jack White asked ICP to do a featured verse on a track. You know, so it was a little surprising, but not that weird given what ICP was at the time and what rap was like at the time. But man, I love the way this song starts. Holy shit! It's Shaggy Tito trying to get Jay to start the song.
Right.
And Jay's trying to think of cool stuff to say. And Shaggy's like fucking roasting him at the time. He's like, all right, I'll stab you with an umbrella, then open it. And Shaggy goes, no!
That shit's whack.
And then when he starts getting into it, finally, he's like, 3-6 Mafia and 6 Clubhouse 6 yes, yes! It's like,
yes. Okay.
So it's such a, like, you can drop this intro onto like any track and it'll get me fired up as hell about what's coming up.
Thank you for starting off with this, Bill, because it's the perfect thing because there's such a disparity in quality between 3-6 Mafia, everybody in 3-6 Mafia and Twisted come through on this track, and it just goes all together. And then you got ICP, and they come in, and you're like, oof, this is clunky. Like, they're trying really hard to hang with these dudes. And I mean, I think this is a fun song. But yeah, they just can't. They're too goofy. They're too much goofballs.
I think it sums up the track perfectly because, like, especially like he's like, that's just whack. Like yelling
right.
at the back.
We gotta really come with something good here. You know, we're on a track with 3-6 Mafia, fucking Academy Award winning 3-6 Mafia.
Yep, the first rap group to win an Oscar.
And also I have to admit I don't know anything about 3-6 Mafia. I didn't know anything about 3-6 Mafia, and I didn't know that Juicy J was from 3-6 Mafia. That it was the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things became apparent to me in the last few days, and so it's been very revelatory listening to this album.
Also, the rare MC that has DJ in his name. DJ Paul is an MC.
MC DJ Paul.
It is just his initials. Who knows? Also, the hook sung by rapped by Gangsta Boo, who showed them who really run in the streets with them calicos. I found out that a calico M960 is a 9x19 millimeter caliber semi-automatic carbine, and not just like running around with your kitty cat showing people who run the streets.
Right. Nope. It's a gun.
I thought calicos might have been like shoes or something, but it's a gun. It definitely ICP owns that gun.
So I think this is a really fun, like, you know, I feel like ICP always wants to do, I don't know if they always want to, or maybe I could even assume that 3-6 Mafia would come in and say, like, we want to do something with ICP. If they contacted them, then they're going to want to do like a theme, right, of a song. And that's how a lot of guest appearances are, at least it seems like to me with ICP, is that when they get together, they don't just add a verse. Like maybe when they're paying Esham $500 to be on their album, you know, on Carnival Carnage, it doesn't go together or whatever. They weren't in the room with ODB, and so that part was really messed up. But generally their collaborations, there's this central theme. And this one is just kind of like we're all like hard asses that hang out with each other.
I think
right?
Yes, absolutely. They're just talking about they're a crazy clique. I think it's best summed up by Jimmy Madrox saying, "We 50 deep on the lawn with the psychopathic leathers on." Just like the idea of like 50 people standing on his front lawn with like wearing leather jackets. So this track actually has my favorite Genius annotation that we've seen yet on an ICP related Genius lyrics page. When one of ICP says, "I walk around your neighborhood like Frankenstein," when Jay says, "I walk around your neighborhood like Frankenstein, choking anybody I can find, I'm taking mine," the annotation is, Violent J is lumbering around like, quote, Frankenstein, when he should be lumbering around like Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, wow.
Frankenstein's monster didn't do. And then there's a picture of like what looks like a theatrical presentation of Frankenstein's monster.
Wow.
Yeah, fucking
that's amazing.
A+, whoever's responsible for this, A+. It's B. Michaels, which I'm going to assume is Brett. A fucking plus, my man.
Well done.
Good job. Whew. He looks like Frankenstein that's been slapped with ugly. We'll get to that next week. Also, the look at my glass eye, I'm sick like Lou Gehrig. Like Lou Gehrig didn't have a glass eye, but that's funny. I don't know judo, but I go Kia.
Kia. Oh yeah.
See, that's what I love the most. Going back to what you were saying, you got like these guys who are rapping so hard, and they just sound like scary, and you've got Shaggy going Kia.
I think it's probably pretty likely that when they called ICP up and they're like, "You want a feature?" I bet ICP was like, "Fuck yeah, we do," and then like thought about it for a couple hours and like, "Oh shit, we got to be on a track with 3-6," and then called the people back and was like, "Can we bring it Twisted also?" Like, I think that's probably what happened. I mean, at this period of time, like, they didn't really do much of anything without Twisted being along for the ride. Like, I watched, just before we recorded, I watched ICP versus Kidman and Rey Mysterio WCW intro, and while they're making their intro with Vampiro, like, while they're coming down the aisle, they're, like, walking by the camera, and, like, Shaggy Tudo, like, puts his face in the camera and goes, "Twisted!" For no reason. They love those guys. It's a real shame what happened. So just another crazy click. I think it's a fun song. I think it's cool. Like that intro gets me super pumped. It's a bummer that the ICP could not hang with everyone else on this track. But it's like cool. It's a cool track.
Yeah, I think it's just fun. It's different. And it's great. Thankfully, we do have Twisted on there to be a bridge between ICP and 3-6 Mafia. I think it works really well. I also really like that there's a moment where in Monoxide's verse he says, "I'm gonna rip your head off and hand it to Violent J to bury it away." And then when we get to Violent J's verse, he says, "This is another crazy click to fuck around and bury ya."
Yep, jiggling on.
I like to drive by with chainsaws. At Monoxide, there was Jamie Madrox, and at the end of his verse, they were doing drive-by on you all with chainsaws. I just think it's just like him hanging out the window with like a big Texas Chainsaw Massacre style chainsaw, and just like instead of like knocking down mailboxes, they're like sawing people off.
Yep. So ICP and 3-6 Mafia, this began a collaboration that would continue because they after one of the members, I think did Juicy J die? I don't remember who died from 3-6 Mafia. One of the members of 3-6 Mafia died, and they became the Mafia 6, which is the same band minus one guy, but out of respect, they changed their name. So ICP and 3-6 Mafia became like pretty tight after this song, and they actually ended up making a super group, ICP and the Mafia 6, which is includes DJ Paul. So it's Violet J, Shaggy 2 DJ Paul, and Crunchy Black. And they collaborated and they made a super group called the Killjoy Club, and they put out a debut album in 2014 called Reindeer Games, and it is they announced at the last gathering of the Juggalos that they're working on a new album, so there's gonna be more Killjoy Club. So we'll get there eventually, but once we get to 2014, we have a whole album of this collabo to look forward to. So I actually ended up,
when I'm like talking to people that hate ICP, I like to always say, well, they're not for everyone, but there are some legit groups out there that collaborate with them, and I always bring up 3-6 Mafia as a legit group of that they've worked with, and then like touring with Bones Thug and Harmony and stuff, and everyone, like, when I tell people that, they always like stop and like, really? I'm like, yeah, and they're like, and so like they don't all of a sudden like say, oh, okay, well now I'll check them out. It's just, they're just like, okay, so like, it's not just Carnival of Carnage in their head. You know what I mean? Like, if all they ever heard was Carnival of Carnage,
right,
then I could see. Anyway.
No, that's awesome. That's a good point. Like, they do have cred with a lot of people. Like, yeah.
Speaking of relationships, I know you got one more thing, Bill, but I did want to, before we get too far away from it, there was one more point in the homie Rob's email from last week, a point that we missed about the song Cartoon Nightmares. Apparently there's a line that's a diss to Isham on that track. So Rob pointed out some of the history for us, which we haven't covered too much. Like, so we did say, I think you said, Bill, on either last week or the week before, about Violent J's tour with Isham getting canceled. And I don't know if the details of that have come out at all, or explanation. I think the explanation was that, sometimes shit just doesn't work out.
The explanation was that, the explanation that Jay gave was that, like, there was just, like, Fearless Fred Fury wasn't done yet. And, like, there was just, like, there were photos to be shot and, like, artwork to be approved and, like, finishing touches to be put on the album. And according to Jay, he felt like it was more important for him to, like, finish up Fred Fury so it could be out on time correctly than to do a solo tour.
Well, I think that a lot of people assumed that it was potentially a fallout between him and Isham because so much of that had happened. So, like, Isham was on Bizarre Bazaar and he was supposed to be on Lotus and they were going to do the Necronomicon together, but then they had a fallout and Isham ended up putting out the album that was supposed to be part of the Necronomicon that was called Tongues, and he dissed Violent J on that record. And then, and so then this album came out in response to that. And the line is, local rappers from my city, they want to talk smack. They be so whack, they ain't even worth a diss back. And so basically Jay saying, like, I'm not even going to get into this with Isham. But then, then they're on a tour together. Like, so they kind of have always had this in and out. Same thing with Twisted, and so, I'm glad to hear that they put out an album with 3 6 Mafia. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I wonder if they're still on good terms.
I'm sure they are, because it said,
Probably.
In 2018 says that they're...
Oh, that's what you're saying. In 2018, there's going to be another album.
Well, no.
No, wait.
Year
In 2018, they said there was going to be another album?
Yeah, they said.
That's
but,
that's what I meant to say.
But who knows? So it's interesting that you brought... Well, one, real quick before I forget. Stabbing someone with an umbrella and then opening it. Amazing visual. So I've been randomly reading about a bunch of, like, different ICP related dramas and whatnots. And it's interesting that, we were talking about, like, Jay and Shaggy and Twisted have fallen out a bunch of times. And they always, like, just come back. Apparently, so this last time that they left, because they had left and formed Magic Ninja Entertainment, but then, like, they had still been playing like gatherings and still been cool with them and, like, doing collaboration stuff. But apparently the Jamie and Paul refusing to do the gathering, the march on Washington, because they invited everyone from Magic Ninja Entertainment to be part of that. And Twisted declined, and then they apparently asked them to, well, you guys can just come. You don't have to march. You can do a performance at the show that we're doing. And they declined that too. And then Twisted went on YouTube and explained, and we talked about that a little bit, explaining, like, these guys are just taking advantage of you to, like, do their lawsuit against the government. They don't, like, we stay out of all that. We just want it to be about the music and want it to be about the family, but they're, like, they're exploiting you to, like, try and win this lawsuit that they have, and we don't want to be a part of that. Apparently that was a bridge too far for everything that's gone down with everybody forever. So, like, Jay has been saying, like, people, Jay had a quote that was something like, people are wondering, their Twist is not going to be back, and it's going to be the same 5 years from now. It's going to be the same 10 years from now. Like, it's over, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, and also, like, to think about, given how close those groups were for so long. Another thing that I thought was really interesting. So Boondocks, who was the first, he was the first Southern rapper that Psychopathic signed. He's got, like, a pumpkin face man, cowboy hat guy. So he signed with Magic Ninja Entertainment. And recently he's actually been doing some EPs and stuff under his original rap name, which is Turncoat Dirty. But he's still apparently going to do Boondock stuff. But so there's a new thing that Violent J and Shaggy are going to do, which is called the Bloody Brothers. And currently the debut Bloody Brothers album is scheduled for July 5th of this year. It's supposed to come out then. So the Bloody Brothers is just Jay and Shaggy. And it's a gimmick that it's them well, it's them, and the gimmick is that they are a pair of backwoods serial killing hillbillies. Which apparently they came up with the concept in 2005, and then they met Boondocks and they gave him that gimmick. So that sort of confirms like what we all really suspected for a while, is that like they sometimes meet people and then like, well, that doesn't really fit with Psychopathic Records, but we like you and we like your talent, so why don't you do this gimmick? Like Big Hoodoo wrapped under a different name, and now that he's on Psychopathic, he is Big Hoodoo and has like a voodoo doctor gimmick, which is really interesting. Like it makes sense, but it's interesting that like they're so upfront about that. And after after last year's gathering of the Juggalos seminar, when they talked about that they're going to be doing the Bloody Brothers now, they're going to be doing an album, they said that from now on, anytime they come up with a gimmick that they were going to use for another artist, we're just going to do it ourselves. Like they're just going to do a concept. Like if they come up with a concept that they like, they're just going to do it themselves, which is, to me, is crazy on a lot of levels. But it like, at first I was like, well, if you guys came up with like just being serial killing hillbillies, like why do you have to do a different gimmick and a different name? Like why can't it just be ICP? And then I was like, that kind of just isn't ICP. Like ICP is Jay and Shaggy as quote unquote themselves, as these guys from Detroit, you know? So it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they've done ICP tracks from the point of view of other people. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on all that?
Well, the way you're describing it, they remind me of wrestling promoters, which they are, and so taking in people and giving them new gimmicks and changing their names. It's kind of reminds me of WWE, where they're just like, even if you leave, we still control and own the rights to this imagery and these characters, and not, you know what I mean? And I think that's pretty cool. I think it's a interesting way to run a music company, and it seems to work for them. And yeah, it's fascinating. It's like the wrestling business in another area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And I think it's what it made me think of while you're saying all of that is, could you imagine like what the amount of content that they would have put out if they did all of their ideas?
It's crazy. Like I think that's probably why they hadn't done it before now. Because like, you know, if they came up with the thing, like if they came up with like the Hillbilly Killers thing, and they're like, oh, it'd be cool to do that, and then they met, you know, Turncoat Dirty, and they're like, oh, why don't you do this thing? Why don't you be Boondocks? Like, then that frees us up to do other shit. Like, it makes sense that, like, at the time of, like, them having, like, everybody on Psychopathic, that they could just be like, you be that, you're that guy, I'm out of here. Like, it makes sense for that. But now that, like, Psychopathic Records is, like, relatively pared down, it makes sense too. I mean, like, back when, like, Boondocks was around and, like, ABK was around, like, I mean, ABK is still around, my bad. But, like, back when, like, Twisted was on the label and, like, Boondocks was on the label and, like, everything, like, they were still doing, like, so much stuff. They were doing, like, the DJ Clay mixtapes, and they were doing Supervillains with Isham, and they were doing, like, all these different shits. So, yeah, we're going to get even more stuff, I guess. They also have a new supergroup as well called the Looney Goons. And this album's supposed to also come out this year, which is ICP, Hoodoo, Light, and Ouija Mac, which is like basically everybody on Psychopathic with the exception of like ABK. And then Light and Ouija Mac have a Psychopathic Reda's inspired duo group called Lil Ridas. And he says Ouija Mac said that they're not trying to rip off Psychopathic Records or disrespect them, but they're very influenced by what Psychopathic Records did. So there's that happening. And then Hoodoo and Anybody Killa and another guy have a group called the Have-Nots. So there's lots of stuff that's going to be coming up. So yeah. Anyway, the next time that we get to Forgotten Freshness 3, we're going to be talking about the next several tracks. So we're going to be talking about Take It, Superstar, Every Halloween, and the Mom Song. But I'm just going to...
Mama.
That's right. Rude Boy. Croon Boy should be his name. But I'm just going to warn people that might not be the next episode you hear, but those are the next tracks you should listen to, because on Friday, as you listen to this, the day after you listen to this, maybe, Ryan and I will be attending the Fearless Fred Fury CD release party hosted by ICP and featuring special guests. And
3-6 Mafia
yeah,
and Twisted.
and Boondocks. But I thought, Ryan, maybe like the next day we could do like a sort of mini episode just recapping that experience. And that will be next week probably.
I'm down.
Are you okay with that, Steve? Not to leave you out. Steve, you'll have to experience it on the podcast.
I hate it.
Well, we'll probably send you a shirt or something. We'll send you a little drip of Fago.
Oh.
Fuck Mountain Dew. All right. Thanks to everybody for listening. We got really in the weeds at points. That's my bad. I learned so much stuff this week that I had to share with everybody, which you already knew 100% of it. So thanks for listening. Thank you to everybody for listening. As always, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dim Carnival. If you got stuff that you know about, like Rob and like Jiggles, that you want to teach us about, we love to hear it. We love learning things. Email us at dimcarnival@gmail.com. And you can follow me on all social media at Sundown Motel. So until next time, I'm Bill.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Ryan.
And I'm sick, like Luke Garrett, guys. I don't know what to do about my glass eye. Help.
I did a marathon yesterday and watched all 10 episodes of The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh, was it good?
Netflix. It's so fucking good.
Nice.
I won't say anything about it then, other than I just was surprised how sad. No, it's so sad that I was happy when it was scary, because I was like, it's so sad.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, yeah. Oh, a jump scare. Hallelujah.
Nice.